I originally met Dr. Pappas at the International Pain Relief Institute in Santa Monica that was run by Dr. Bruce Fromm, and that's where the first U.S. studies were done. Panos is a world-renowned, brilliant physicist with many published papers and other patents, other inventions that he's made. His full name is Panos T. Pappas. He's a doctor of physics and a doctorate in mathematics. He teaches, actually holds the chair for the math department and the physics department at the University of Piraeus in Athens, which is their equivalent to our MIT. It's the largest, most prestigious school in Athens. And he graduated from that same school, I think when he was 17 years old, cum laude. Very brilliant man. Comes from the Isle of Ithaca, same place Homer did. This is the same place that Socrates did. Let's come back to how did this thing get started. AT&T had a big problem. They have breaks in the cables in the Atlantic, and it's carrying thousands and thousands of calls. So in order to repair the underwater cable, the normal procedure is you send down a drone submarine and it cruises along the cable and finds the break, and then you got to send down the divers to repair it. And the drone submarines cost $4,000 a day, and the average time to find a break was 11 days. So they wanted a better system. They got two physicists, Dr. Panos Pappas and an American physicist, did an experiment at MIT that lasted for about 3 months. What they were doing is taking wire, hooking it into a special vise, and running so much current through it that it actually physically melted the wire. There was a break. And they studied by the 10,000th of a second what was going on during the break. They found that anytime there's a break, there's a very brief electromagnetic field flash. This can be picked up from the surface. So now the ship takes less than a day to find the break. And they drop the divers, and they don't need a drone. So they were delighted. Normally that would have been end of experiment, good results, thank you very much, goodbye. However, Bruce and Panos, the two physicists working together, had become fairly tight during this time period. And Bruce confessed to Panos he was dying from cancer. He wanted to make sure that Panos would give a good math education to his sons. And he had less than 6 months to live. It had completely metastasized, started in the liver. Nothing could be done. About 2 or 3 weeks after the experiment had concluded and Panos had returned with his wife back to Athens, he called Bruce. How you doing? Bruce said, I was going to call you tonight. I just got back from the doctors. My CA-125 markers are 0. I don't have cancer anymore. We don't know what happened. So Panos just assumed it was a spontaneous remission having nothing to do with the machine. But in subsequent conversations with Bruce, he kept thinking about, could it have been the machine? He was quite concerned at that point because during the experiment that they had done, his wife started the experiment when she was 3 months pregnant and concluded when she was 6 months pregnant. And Panos kept thinking, the only thing that will wipe out cancer is radiation. So maybe there was some radiation that we didn't know about during the experiment. My goodness, what did it do to the fetus? So he bit his tongue, didn't talk to his wife about it, waited until after the baby was delivered, perfectly normal delivery. Within several months, they could see the child was quite bright. And now he was in a conundrum. What could have wiped out Bruce's cancer and yet not harmed the infant? They kept very good records, of course, of the experiment, and he had this as a source material. He went back through it. The only thing that he could think of that might have a biological effect was that same pulsed magnetic instant as the wire separated. Didn't seem reasonable to him. Now understand, he's a physicist. He's not a medical doctor. It didn't seem reasonable to him that there could be a physiological change in people based on a flash that only took place for about a 10,000th of a second. That can't have an effect on people. He wasted a year looking at other things it might have been, and he kept coming back to the magnetic flash. So he decided he had to either prove it or disprove it. And he designed a machine taking some of the information from the early pioneers like Rife, Lakovsky, Priori, came up with a better delivery system than they had used, this loop delivery, and ordered mice with tumors from the scientific supply house in Athens and pulsed them for 3 minutes every day for 6 weeks. Somewhere during the 4th week, the last tumor went away. So even his experiment ran for 6 weeks. The last 2 weeks, he was pulsing healthy mice. So he approached my father, who was a medical theorist working for the National Institute of Health at that time, and asked him, can you come up with an explanation of what's going on here? Why are people getting all these wonderful benefits? So my father worked up some theories and set a pilot study in Santa Monica at the International Pain Relief Institute, which was headed up by Dr. Bruce Fromm. He's also the inventor of Fromex, 1-hour picture developing. Very bright guy, attorney, doctor, everything, all kinds of degrees. And Bruce brought 4 machines over and started doing trials with them. When my dad found out how much energy was used, he was at first terrified that there would be some kind of harmful side effect, something. And literally waited until they had more than 1,000 patients done and he could review the medical records before he would say this is a good thing or a bad thing. My dad was very conservative. But it became quickly apparent that only beneficial effects were happening. There were no harmful side effects. My father mentioned that he wanted me to use this pulse magnetic device on my back. I laughed. I thought, $35,000 worth of surgery didn't fix my back. My father said, I'll take you out to lunch by the airport. I said, great. When we were in the car, he said, oh, and we're going to stop and treat your back. And my first thought was, at least I get a lunch out of this. Because I really didn't expect anything. I'm, by nature, scientifically inquisitive, and by training, scientific training, and learning about all of the facts, that's where my head was. So when I first went to use it, and I met Dr. Papas, and my dad was very bright, and Papas was very bright, I went, okay, well, I'll try it. I went Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to the International Pain Relief Institute. Monday, when I stood up, I thought there was a little less edge to the pain. Like it wasn't quite as sharp. But I wasn't at all convinced. I thought, well, that could be placebo, or the fact that I really want the pain to go away is tricking my mind. Wednesday, it was sort of more of the same. It seemed like there was less pain, but I still wasn't convinced. And I started telling myself, well, if there's less pain, I'm not sure that had anything to do with it. I've seen hundreds of people with these same reactions since. Friday, I used it. I stood up. I was pain-free. My knee-jerk reaction was to turn around and look on the floor. I thought the pain would be lying there. I couldn't imagine where it went. It was just gone. And since my father was right again, I went around the room saying, well, wait, if I move this way, it always hurts. Or maybe it's this way. Or maybe, and I couldn't find a position that would cause even a twinge of pain. I then went around the room picking up heavier and heavier things till I picked up the nurse, 130 pounds. I hadn't been able to pick up 25 pounds without my back going into spasm a week earlier. The next morning I woke up and waited for the pain to come back. I did that for a couple of weeks. Nothing. Gone. So I became intrigued.